I always thought love sounded loud, like laughter echoing down a hallway, or two people talking over each other just to be heard. I never expected it to whisper and still break me. It was a Friday evening, one of those in-between hours when the sun's still hanging on but the hallway lights are already glowing. I just wrapped my arms around Kara, my wife, for what I thought would be a regular hug. Just a simple moment, a small recharge. But then I heard her murmur it, soft, under her breath, like her lungs didn't mean to let it slip. God, don't. 2 words. That's all it took. My body went stiff. Her frame, already tense, barely made contact with mine. And when I pulled back to look at her, she turned away, too quickly vanishing into the bedroom like a shadow ducking the light. I didn't follow. I just stood there in the hallway, palms still hovering where her body used to be, listening to the rustle of fabric behind the closed door. My breath caught in my throat. I replayed it again in my mind, desperate to find a different version. One where she didn't flinch. One where I imagined it. But I didn't. You don't mistake a plea like that. God, don't, isn't confusion. It's resistance. It's disgust wrapped in exhaustion. I swallowed hard and stepped back, slowly lowering my arms. For a second, I stared at the family photo hanging by the coat closet. Me, Kara, and a golden afternoon from 2 years ago. She was smiling wide, sunglasses perched on her head. I looked tired, but happy. She had her arm around my waist. Her fingers clutched the fabric of my shirt like she was afraid I'd drift away. I remember thinking at the time, I'm lucky. Not lucky like fate's favorite, but lucky like someone who found shelter right before the storm hit. That photo lied to me. Or maybe we both did. I stood in that hallway longer than I care to admit, listening, waiting, hoping for the bedroom door to creak open, for her to say it was nothing, that she'd stubbed her toe, that I imagined it, that she needed space, or had a bad day, but silence. I didn't knock, didn't press. Instead, I walked into the kitchen and leaned on the counter, staring down at a chipped mug still half full of her tea. The label from the tea bag dangled like a forgotten warning sign. Who says something like that when their husband touches them? I wanted to be angry. I should have been angry, but I just felt hollow, like I'd opened the fridge expecting food and found it completely bare. Our life wasn't glamorous. We weren't the kind of couple that drew envious stares at dinner parties, but we had stability, or so I thought. I worked as a software project manager in downtown Seattle. Clean routines, dependable deadlines, and quiet train rides home. Kara ran a boutique design studio out of the house, graphic branding for eco-conscious companies. Our lives had rhythm. Laundry on Sundays. Grocery runs on Thursdays. We had a shared Google Calendar that practically mapped our marriage. And maybe that was part of the problem. Maybe she got tired of a life that made too much sense. Or maybe she just got tired of me. But here's the part that stays with me. After she disappeared into the bedroom, she never once looked back. Not even a half-hearted glance. Not even a flicker of guilt. It was like the moment had been rehearsed. And that terrified me more than anything. Because if that flinch wasn't spontaneous, if it was instinctual, then how long had she felt this way? And what else was she hiding? I stood in that hallway for a long time, my heartbeat echoing louder than my thoughts. I didn't know it yet, but that was the last time I'd reach for her without hesitation. The next time, I'd be reaching for the truth. The car ride home was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that soothes you after a long day. It was the kind of quiet that hums in your ears and presses into your skull until your own heartbeat feels too loud. I kept my eyes on the road, both hands gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from veering into madness. Laura, on the other hand, looked out the window with this relaxed detachment, like we'd just left a spa, not a social landmine. I couldn't hold it in anymore. That kiss, I said, my voice low, deliberate. That wasn't a joke. She didn't turn, just blinked slowly, her reflection cold in the window. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about, I said, teeth clenched. You didn't have to pick Evan, and you didn't have to kiss him like that. Now she turned, slowly, like she was bored. It was a dare, Michael, she said with a shrug. You're blowing it way out of proportion. Proportion? My stomach turned. She was minimizing it, gaslighting me with casual cruelty. As if the moment I watched her lips press into Evan's, saw the way her fingers curled behind his neck, was something I imagined. As if it was all harmless fun and I was just being dramatic. I saw the way you looked at him, I muttered. Laura scoffed and crossed her legs in the passenger seat. Please. It lasted what? 10 seconds. 11. I said quietly. I hadn't meant to count, but I had. Silence. Then a laugh, dry, dismissive. God, Michael, are you timing me now? I pulled the car into the parking space outside our apartment. Didn't answer. Just stared straight ahead. My knuckles ached from gripping the wheel. She turned to me fully now. Eyes sharp. You're seriously jealous over a dare? Evan didn't even mean it. It's not like I slept with him. And there it was. That sentence. The line people toss out when they know they've crossed a different kind of boundary, not physical, but emotional. A deeper kind. You're not sorry, I said, almost to myself. You're not even pretending to be. She rolled her eyes. I'm not going to apologize for playing a stupid game at a party. You're the one making this weird. I'm making this weird? I repeated, looking at her like I didn't recognize her anymore. Yeah, she said, already grabbing her purse. Get over it, Michael. And with that, she stepped out of the car, heels clicking against the pavement, the night swallowing her indifference whole. I stayed in the car for another 10 minutes, staring at the dashboard, heart racing like I'd just been in an accident. But it wasn't the impact that hurt. It was the slow, quiet realization she didn't care. Not about the kiss. Not about me. And somehow, that hurt more than if she'd confessed to something worse. The apartment felt colder when I finally walked in. She was already in bed, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. I didn't speak. Didn't even look at her. Just went to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and stared at myself in the mirror. I looked the same, but something inside me had shifted. That night, I laid beside her in the dark and didn't sleep. Again, my thoughts were spinning, and in their center was a single, sharp conclusion. If she was going to play this like a game, then I needed to stop being the one losing. She wanted indifference? Fine. I'd give her indifference. Casual. Calm. But inside, I was already setting the board for something else. Not revenge. Not yet. But something colder. Something controlled. Something calculated. Because if this was a dare, then I'd take my turn. And when I did, she'd feel it. It started with a smile. Not the fake kind you wear when you're trying to keep the peace. No, this one was real. And it wasn't for Laura. It was for Haley. We were at our friend Greg's place for a small game night. The kind of gathering where couples drink too much wine and pretend they're still in their 20s. Laura had been buzzing around the living room like a queen bee, tossing out loud laughs and brushing Evan's arm when she talked to him. Like nothing had happened. But I wasn't watching her. I was watching Haley. She'd always been Lara's closest friend. The kind of woman who remembered birthdays without checking Facebook and actually meant it when she asked how your day was. She wasn't showy or loud, just naturally present, like you always knew when she walked into a room because the space settled a little. Balanced. Haley was standing by the kitchen island, sipping something amber from a low ball glass, when I joined her. Still a whiskey girl? I asked, picking up a glass for myself. She looked over, surprised, then smiled. You remembered. Hard to forget, I said, letting my voice soften just slightly. You always made it look classier than the rest of us. That earned a small laugh, not the kind you toss out of politeness, but the kind that sneaks up on you. She tilted her head, giving me a look I wasn't used to from her. Are you okay? She asked, not in a dramatic way, just soft, sincere. I nodded. Better now. It was subtle, measured, but the flicker in her eyes told me she caught it. We spent the next 20 minutes standing side by side, not touching, not crossing any obvious lines, but something passed between us. Every time I said something that made her smile, I saw Laura glance our way. Every time Haley leaned in to hear me better, I felt Lara's energy shift from smug to alert. And I didn't do anything to stop it. Haley mentioned a new job offer in the city. Something about digital branding for a startup. I asked questions, real ones. Not the kind of vague nods people throw out at parties. I asked what drew her to the role, what scared her about the move, what she hoped it might lead to. And she answered, honestly, openly. When was the last time I had a conversation like that in my own living room? Laura eventually made her way over, wrapping a possessive arm around mine with a smile so polished it gleamed. You two look cozy, she said lightly, her eyes locked on Haley. Haley smiled, cool and unfazed. Michael was just telling me how much he loves digital art. Who knew he had such a creative side? I gave a casual shrug. You spend enough time with a designer, some of it rubs off. Lara's laugh came out brittle. Well, maybe you can design my next logo, huh? I looked at her, calm and unreadable. I think you've got enough people volunteering for that role. She blinked, taken aback just long enough for the moment to settle. Haley excused herself soon after, but not before giving me a look. Something unreadable. Curious, maybe. Or intrigued. Back at home, Laura was unusually quiet. She didn't mention Haley. Didn't ask about the conversation. But I saw her watching me from the bathroom mirror while I brushed my teeth, her eyes darting over my face like she was trying to find the thread she'd lost. And in that silence, I realized something important. I didn't flirt with Haley because I wanted her. I flirted because for the first time in weeks, I saw Laura unsettled. And that meant she could still feel something. It was a spark. Small. But sparks start fires. And I had no intention of putting this one out. The next party wasn't supposed to be dramatic. It was one of those backyard setups, string lights overhead, half-melted coolers, a Bluetooth speaker cycling through early 2000s throwbacks. Comfortable. Predictable. And yet I walked in knowing exactly what I was about to do. Laura was already there when I arrived. She wore that red dress she always saves for nights she wants to be noticed, fitted. Simple. Devastating. She glanced at me when I walked in, raised her glass slightly, then returned to her conversation with Evan. That same smirk played at her lips. The same one from the cabin. But this time, I had no intention of walking out humiliated. Haley showed up late, hair damp like she just stepped out of the shower, cheeks still flushed from the heat. She found me near the fire pit, and her smile was the easy kind. The kind that made the air around us feel lighter. "Hey," she said, brushing ash from the log bench before sitting beside me. "Didn't think I'd make it tonight." "I'm glad you did," I replied without missing a beat. We talked like no one else was around. About work, books, the podcast she just binged. It felt like the world shrank a little around us. Not romantic, not yet, but intimate in a way that felt electric. And then someone suggested it. Of course they did. Truth or dare? The circle formed fast. I ended up sitting directly across from Laura, who was perched on a lawn chair like she was holding court. Haley sat beside me, knees drawn up, drink resting between them. The game started with safe dares, eat a spoonful of mustard, text her crush something awkward, wear socks on your hands for 5 minutes. Then it was Lara's turn. She didn't hesitate. "Michael," she said, voice silky. "Truth or dare?" A flicker of interest passed through the group. I smiled, slow, deliberate. "Dare." She leaned forward, her eyes glittering. "Kiss someone." "Not me." I heard the catch in her voice, so slight you'd miss it if you didn't know her like I did. I turned toward Haley, and without asking, without giving her or the crowd time to react, I leaned in and kissed her. Not a peck, not playful. A kiss that made time slow. The kind of kiss that says, "I'm not playing anymore." And to my surprise, and maybe hers, Haley kissed me back. Not stiff or shocked, but warm, real. The group fell dead silent. Even the speaker cut out mid-chorus. When we pulled apart, Haley held my gaze for a breath longer than necessary. Then she whispered, soft enough only I could hear, "Let's do that again sometime." I leaned back, lips still tingling, and only then looked at Laura. Her smile had cracked. She masked it quickly, but not before I saw the twitch in her jaw. The way her fingers clenched around her cup. The way she laughed, too loud, too sharp, at nothing in particular a moment later. But the damage was done. I didn't look her way for the rest of the game. I kept my arm on the back of Haley's chair, kept my tone light, and my eyes everywhere but Laura. Later, as the party thinned out, Laura cornered me near the kitchen sink where I was refilling my water bottle. "That was cute," she said, casually swirling ice in her cup. "What was?" "That little performance," she replied. "You really wanted to get a rise out of me." I gave her a look, calm, measured. "I was just playing the game." "Like you did." She stepped in closer. "You don't even like her like that." I smiled. "You sure about that?" And for a second, just a flicker, I saw it. The fear behind her fire. The flicker of doubt. Then I walked away, leaving her standing there, drink in hand, watching me with eyes that no longer held the upper hand. Because if she wanted to play with fire, I was finally learning how to burn. You can only pull a thread so long before the whole thing unravels. And that night, it finally did. The party was well underway, another backyard, another round of drinks and forced small talk. But the energy was different, tighter. You could feel it in the glances, the awkward pauses when I walked by with Haley at my side. Laura was quieter than usual. That alone should have been a warning. She stuck close to Evan most of the evening, her laughter louder than necessary, her touches more frequent than friendly. But no one was really watching him. Everyone was watching her watching me. Haley and I had kept things casual, Nothing overt, but subtle was enough. A shared laugh here, a playful nudge there. I made sure to keep just enough distance to be innocent, but not too much to be invisible. It didn't take long before Laura cracked. We were all standing near the fire pit again, a group of us passing around marshmallows and stories. Haley was beside me, warm and easy. Someone tossed out another dare, a dumb one, and the group laughed. Then Lara's voice cut through the night like a blade. Why don't you two just get a room already? It was loud, sharp, unmistakably aimed. The circle went quiet. I looked at her slowly. Excuse me. She stepped forward, eyes bright with something too wild to be controlled. You heard me, she snapped. Is this supposed to be your version of revenge? Flirting with my best friend like a high schooler trying to prove a point. Haley stiffened beside me. I stayed calm. You dare me to kiss someone? I did. You kissed her like you meant it. Laura shouted, voice cracking. You humiliated me. Now all eyes were on us. Conversations died out. Someone cut the music. Even the fire seemed to lean in. I took a slow breath, keeping my voice even. Didn't you do the same thing, Laura? Cabin party? Evan, that was different, she hissed. That wasn't about what? I interrupted. Feelings? Or control? Her mouth opened, then closed. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. And then she snapped. You're pathetic, Michael. You think kissing Haley makes you a man? You think that's going to fix the fact that you've been sleepwalking through this marriage for years? It stung, but not in the way she hoped. Because for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel small. I felt seen, and I didn't shrink. I met her gaze, steady. Maybe I was sleepwalking, but at least I wasn't pretending to be happy while kissing other people behind my husband's back. She flinched. The silence that followed was thick, pulsing. And then, without another word, Laura spun around and stormed off into the house, the screen door slamming behind her like a punctuation mark. Nobody said anything. They didn't need to. Everyone had just witnessed the moment the queen lost her crown. And I didn't feel bad about it. Not even a little. The silence after Lara's outburst didn't last long. People went back to their drinks, nervously talking louder than usual, as if noise could wipe the memory of what just happened. I stayed seated, still, like I was waiting for something. Because I was. You can tell when something's unfinished. That night was far from over. I gave it an hour. Just enough time to make sure no one would think I was chasing her. I needed that distinction. I needed them to see me calm, not broken. Then I stood, stretched, and casually walked out of the main cabin. It was quiet outside. The moon floated high over the lake, silver and indifferent. I passed the fire pit, still glowing faintly, and made my way to the side building, one of the guest rooms. I don't know what drew me there. Call it instinct. Call it pain dressed as curiosity. The door was shut, not locked. I turned the knob slowly, silently. And the second it creaked open, I knew. Evan's laugh. Low. Smug. The kind of sound that didn't belong in that moment, in that place. And then I saw them. Laura was tangled in the sheets, her back bare, her hair messy. She looked up mid-laugh and saw me standing there. Her face went pale. Evan just grinned. Hey, buddy, he said, propping himself up on one elbow like this was some sick sitcom. Didn't expect an audience. Time stopped. My fists curled before I could stop them. I didn't think. I didn't speak. I hit him. One punch. Maybe two. The second his nose burst, the room filled with noise. His groan, Lara's scream, the sound of flesh meeting bone. Michael, stop, she yelled, trying to grab my arm. I pulled back, chest heaving, staring at the man I once called a friend, now bleeding, laughing through it. Laura wrapped the sheet around herself, face torn between panic and disbelief. It meant nothing, she said, her voice breaking. Michael, I swear. But I didn't want to hear it. Not the lies. Not the excuses. Not the regret that came only after the damage was done. I turned around and walked out. Didn't say a word. The screen door slapped shut behind me, echoing across the quiet night like a gavel. Outside, the air was cooler now. Clean. And in that moment, I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry. I was done. The walk back from the guest cabin wasn't long, but every step felt like I was putting miles between who I used to be and the man I was becoming. I didn't slam doors. I didn't scream. That kind of rage was for people still trying to change something. I wasn't. By the time I got back to the main lodge, Most of the party had drifted off to sleep or disappeared into whispered side conversations. A few people looked up when I entered, caught a glimpse of something in my face, and quickly looked away. No one asked where I'd been. Maybe they knew. Maybe they didn't want to know. I went straight to our room, packed my things in silence. Just the essentials. I moved slowly, deliberately, folding each item like it mattered. Control. It's strange how grief can make you obsessive about control. I couldn't stop Laura from crossing that line. Couldn't stop Evan from betraying years of friendship for a thrill. But I could choose how I responded. And I chose silence. She didn't follow me. Not right away. It wasn't until I was stepping out into the hallway, bag over my shoulder, that I heard her voice, small, frantic. "Michael, wait." I turned. There she was, still wrapped in that same sheet like it could cover what she'd done. Her eyes were wide, face flushed, hair wild around her shoulders. "It didn't mean anything," she said again, like repetition might make it true. "It just happened. I was drunk. I was angry. I didn't think. That's the problem." I cut in quietly. "You didn't think. Because you never thought there'd be consequences." She stepped forward. "Please. You can't just walk away from us. From everything." I said, tilting my head. "You mean me and the woman who made out with my best friend in front of everyone? Or me and the woman I just found in his bed?" She flinched like the words slapped her. "Michael, you broke something," I said. "And the worst part? You knew exactly what you were doing. You just didn't expect I'd finally stop caring." She stood there, mouth trembling, trying to gather a defense that wouldn't come. I waited for anger to rise in me again, but it didn't. Just that same cool clarity. "I'm going home," I said. "Don't follow me." I turned and walked out, the lodge door creaking behind me, then falling shut with a heavy finality. The night air hit me like a wave. Cool, sharp, honest. I threw my bag in the back of my car, slid into the driver's seat, and just sat there for a minute, staring at my own reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't recognize that man, but I trusted him. He was calm. He was done playing games, and he was finally ready to start again. I got back to the apartment just before dawn. The city was still asleep, those few hours where even the traffic seemed to whisper. I dropped my bag just inside the door and stood in the middle of the living room, letting the silence wrap around me like armor. Everything looked exactly as we'd left it. Blanket draped over the couch, one mug still on the coffee table, half-dead plant in the window that we both kept forgetting to water. It should have felt familiar. Instead, it felt like a crime scene. I didn't go to bed, didn't bother changing clothes. I just sat on the couch, elbows on my knees, staring at nothing. When the sun started bleeding through the blinds, I got up, pulled out the small safe we kept in the hallway closet. Notebooks, passwords, tax forms, all the boring pieces of a shared life. And there, at the bottom, were the papers I'd printed months ago but never filled out. Divorce forms. I'd saved them when things first started to shift, back when the tension was just a background hum. I remember thinking it was paranoid of me to have them ready. Now, it felt like the only sane thing I'd done. I brought them to the kitchen table, sat down, and started filling them out. Name, date, reason, irreconcilable differences. The pen moved smoothly. My hand didn't shake. Halfway through the first page, I heard the knock. 3 soft raps. Hesitant. Scared. I knew it was her before I opened the door. Laura stood there in yesterday's clothes, hair tied up messily, mascara smeared. She looked like she hadn't slept either. The moment she saw me, her face crumpled. "Michael, please." I didn't say a word, just stepped aside. She came in slowly, like someone entering a church after years away. "I shouldn't have," she started, but her voice cracked and she covered her mouth. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I don't even know what I was thinking," she choked. "It was stupid, it was selfish, and I didn't want to lose you, I swear. I just wanted to feel something." I turned back to the table, picked up the pen, and resumed writing. She saw the papers then, froze. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Michael, what is this?" I didn't answer. She stepped forward, reaching for them, but I pulled the forms slightly closer to me, calm and methodical. "Please don't do this," she whispered, voice shaking. "We can fix it. We've been through worse." I looked up, finally meeting her eyes. "No," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "We haven't." She dropped into the chair across from me, shoulders collapsing. as if my words carried weight she couldn't hold anymore. I made a mistake, she whispered. No, I replied, eyes steady. You made a choice. She looked down, her tears dripping onto the edge of the table. You don't have to forgive me, she murmured. Just don't stop loving me. I stared at her, heart heavy, but not in pain. Just done. You played with fire, I said softly, and called it freedom. She swallowed, unable to speak. I slid the papers into a folder and stood up. I just stopped burning for you. And with that, I left her sitting there. No more fights, no more begging, just the sound of my footsteps down the hall, and the weight of a love that had finally burned itself out. It was around 7 that evening when my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a name I'd been half expecting, half avoiding. Haley. I stared at it for a moment, thumb hovering. Haley, hey, just wanted to check on you. If you want to talk or blow off steam, I'm around. There was no pressure in her words, no flirtation, just something calm, human. And somehow, that hit harder than anything else. I stared out the window for a moment. The sun was gone, the city dipped in gold and shadow. I thought about staying in, thought about ignoring her text, but something in me moved. I didn't want to sit with the silence again. So I typed back, me, I could use a conversation. That diner on 6 still open. Haley, give me 20. The diner was mostly empty when I walked in. Same cracked vinyl booths. Same hum of old fluorescent lights. Smelled like burnt toast and ancient coffee filters. Haley was already there, sitting at a corner table, nursing a cup of tea. She looked up when I approached, and for a second, neither of us said anything. She stood. We didn't hug, but something passed between us in that pause, like acknowledgement of 100 things left unsaid. Hey, she said softly. Hey. We sat. It wasn't awkward. It was cautious, like we both knew the ground beneath us was still soft. We talked for a while. About nothing at first. Traffic, work, how weirdly cold the weather had gotten. Then the conversation curled inward. I didn't know, she said, eyes on her tea. I mean, I knew something was off with you too, but I didn't know it was that bad. I nodded slowly. I didn't either. Until it was. Silence again, but it wasn't heavy. She looked up at me, her voice tentative. That night, the kiss. I didn't plan that. I know, I said, but I wanted it. I won't lie to you. Her honesty wasn't brash. It was quiet, brave. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It wasn't just a move. I wasn't trying to use you. She nodded. I figured. Still, if it was about Laura, I needed to know. It started that way, I admit it. But now, I don't know. Maybe it's just about finally doing something that feels real. She smiled faintly. That's the first honest thing I've heard in weeks. The waitress refilled our drinks. Neither of us touched the menu. We just sat there, two people unlearning who they'd been around someone else. You're not obligated to me, Michael, she said gently. I'm not here to be your rebound. I know, I said, but if you need a friend, or something more, someday, I'm not going anywhere. The look she gave me wasn't flirtation. It was understanding. And in that booth, under flickering lights, something unspoken passed between us. A beginning. Not clean, not easy, but real. I paid the check. She walked me to my car. We didn't kiss, but as she turned to leave, she paused and looked over her shoulder. Take your time, she said, but don't stay in that silence too long. You deserve more than just surviving it. I nodded, watching her walk into the night. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. The strange thing about healing is how quietly it begins. There's no dramatic turning point, no lightning bolt that yells, you're better now. It's more like waking up one day and realizing the pain didn't beat you to consciousness. After the diner, Haley and I didn't rush into anything. No long confessions, no sudden declarations. Just two people exchanging simple check-ins, sometimes over text, sometimes over coffee. And it was exactly what I needed. One evening, maybe 2 weeks later, I found myself in her apartment for the first time. It smelled like cinnamon and fabric softener. Her living room was cluttered in a lived-in, honest kind of way. Books on every surface. A cat I didn't know she had eyed me from the armrest like I needed to prove myself. We sat on her couch. Close, but not close enough to burn. A movie played in the background. One of those films neither of us really paid attention to. I haven't had someone just sit with me in a long time, she said, her voice soft. I turned to her. You seem like someone people don't walk away from. They don't, she said, offering a quiet smile. I just learned not to hold them too tightly. Something about that stayed with me. All night. Later, we shared a bottle of red wine. Her knee brushed mine. I didn't move. Neither did she. No tension. No performance. Just presence. And when she rested her head on my shoulder, I closed my eyes, not because I was tired, but because it felt like peace. Not excitement. Not distraction. Peace. I stayed until almost midnight. As I stood at her door, she looked up at me like she wasn't sure what came next. So I made it easy. Not yet, I said gently. But soon. She nodded. No sadness. No pressure. Just grace. Back at my place, the air felt different. Lighter. Even the shadows on the walls seemed softer. I passed the kitchen table where the divorce papers still sat in their folder, signed, sealed, untouched since that day. I talked to a lawyer tomorrow, or the day after. There was no urgency anymore, because I wasn't angry now. Just free. Laura hadn't reached out again. No texts. No calls. I figured maybe she was giving me space, or maybe she'd finally understood the weight of her choices. But whatever her reason, her silence no longer felt like punishment. It felt like distance. And distance felt good. The next morning, I brewed coffee with a kind of calm I hadn't known in years. Sat by the window, sunlight on my face, cup warm in my hand. My phone buzzed once. Haley, hope you woke up to something good. I stared at the screen for a moment, smiling without meaning to. Me. I did. It was a Saturday when she showed up again. I'd just gotten back from a walk, one of those quiet mornings where the city feels softer than usual. Haley and I had plans later. Nothing dramatic. Just lunch, maybe a bookstore. Something ordinary. Something steady. I turned the key in my front door, stepped inside, and there she was. Laura. Sitting on the edge of the couch like she didn't belong in the space anymore. Because she didn't. She stood when she saw me. Her eyes were glassy, and I could tell she'd been working up the nerve to speak since she got there. Hi, she said, like it still had power over me. It didn't. I set my keys on the table, hung my jacket. Didn't ask how she got in. She still had a spare, apparently. I won't stay long, she said quickly, voice shaky. I needed to say it to your face. I leaned against the kitchen counter. Said nothing. She took a shaky breath. I was stupid. Reckless. And the second it happened, what I did with Evan, I knew it was something I'd never be able to undo. Still, I said nothing. I thought I could handle being wild for one night, she continued, twisting her fingers together. But all I did was light a match I couldn't control. I lost the one person who actually stood by me. Her voice cracked. I stayed still. I've been in therapy, she added, trying to understand why I did what I did, why I keep blowing up the good things in my life. I raised an eyebrow, and she blinked, because I never felt in control. And you were always so steady, Michael. I think I wanted to shake that, to see if I could break it. And when I did, when I saw you pull away, I realized what I destroyed. For a long moment, I just looked at her, at the woman I once thought I'd grow old beside. She looked the same, but I didn't feel the same. You want forgiveness, I said. I do, she whispered. And what happens if I give it to you? I asked. You think that brings us back to where we were? No, she admitted. But maybe it lets you move on, and maybe it lets me stop hating myself. I nodded slowly, then stepped toward her, not close, just enough. I don't hate you, Laura, I said. I just don't believe you anymore. Tears filled her eyes again, but I didn't flinch. You didn't lose me because you made a mistake, I continued. You lost me because you looked me in the eye after, and shrugged. She covered her mouth. Her shoulders trembled. I'm not angry anymore, I said gently, but I'm not coming back. I can't, because what I had with you, it's not something I can want again. It's something I survived. She nodded, tears streaming freely now. I'm sorry, she said one last time. I know. And with that, I opened the door. She stood there for a moment, like she wanted to say something else. But then she walked out, and I didn't watch her go. Later that afternoon, I met Haley for lunch. She smiled when she saw me, eyes bright under the sunlight. Everything okay? She asked, reading my face like a page she knew by heart. I nodded, sliding into the seat across from her. Yeah, I said. It finally is. We clinked glasses. Outside the window, the world went on. And this time, I was walking forward with both hands free.